does consciousness ultimately examine itself? Through what lens? And that's the lens of the conditioned mind. And that's kind of what you allow that lens to be, or that prism. And in Tibetan scriptures, the multifaceted prism, which can be a prison too. Now, careful. That allows the light of consciousness to be seen, even as it reflects and refracts down into these human forms. It allows that light to examine everything as if you see that light behind it that's animating it. And that would determine the veracity of it, the truth of it. You know? I always bring it back into my body. I always bring it back, excuse me. I always bring it back into feeling it as deeply as I can. And for me, I have to take the intellectual part of this, the part that's screaming, talking to you right now, and I have to make sure that matches the experiential, bodily, psychological, biological profile as it's being spoken. So I'm trying to listen to the intelligence that's being spoken about yoga, and I'm trying to immediately, spontaneously validate that thought with the experience of my own body. Kira and I would often talk about this, and it's really hard to get to a state of consciousness, and then once you get to this state of consciousness, it's really hard to motivate yourself to even want to talk, because it's just so perfectly blissful, and anything you say brings it down, so to speak, limits it. So those are the structural details in trying to implement this state of consciousness as is spoken. But it feels like something that could be done. So this is what I'm trying to do now. And as I'm moving this energy through my own intestinal and digestive systems, and I'm feeling, and I've been fasting for a bit, just allowing any healing, energy flows, anything that's restricted, checking my pancreas, my gallbladder, just checking in, do a self-diagnostic, so to speak, taking the time to just check in, make sure the energy flows are at least taking care of them as best they can be taken care of. This is how I think that we should, everyone, no matter what your age is, should take the time to do this. The dog. Being a dog. Well, our systems of perceptive intelligence through the different levels of the spectrum of awareness, all have their price of awareness to have. And sometimes that's just barking, but be aware of your own, and I'm speaking to myself here too, levels of perceptive, threat-based intelligence, and make sure that's being properly analyzed on an instantaneous basis. By the way, I'm not talking about like I'm going to soon watching this later. I do that to listen to myself, but you create the systems that self-analyze, and you don't have to go barking off at something. That's the UPS man. Big deal. I try to use these things as a metaphorical teaching for myself to examine how I, respond to things and how close I can get to that triggered response, which ultimately, even if it's just barely I catch it in time, still triggers a neurolinguistic, biochemical neurotransmitter-driven subconscious kick in there, and all of a sudden that becomes awake again. So I try to get a little ahead of that particular synaptic type of response here. It's subtle. I mean, you have to. If you're going to go in meditation, you're gonna do some time, lapsing here. You're gonna be able to move through. You'll be able to watch and elongate and pick apart to some degree the efficacy of your own words. It's kind of interesting, and I enjoy doing this. So it's kind of like, okay, that's how that works, and I'm enjoying the access to see how this works in my own mind. And I guess I'm trying to document that to some degree, and hopefully to some success. I'll be watching anyway, so this is what I think about when I think about things.